People who have a job where they go into other people's homes. What's the weirdest, most disturbing thing you've seen while working in a customer's house? Was a firefighter another time in my life. Had a middle of the night call to a mobile home for an elderly lady once. We walk in and it's dark, but as my eyes start to adjust I think, oh, that's weird wallpaper. I keep looking around, it's on the ceiling too. Weird inconsistent patterns and rectangle shapes. Eyes adjust some more while we are talking to her. WTF, are those puzzles? She had hundreds of puzzles that she had glued when completed and then glued them to every surface of her mobile home. Walls, ceiling, living room, bedroom, every square inch covered. Weird, but you do you, especially in your own home. Disturbing? Not at all. Weird? A bit. I was a medical equipment delivery guy for a couple years. Went into a dementia patient's house and had to instruct his caretaker on how to set up a large e-tank of O2. As I was kneeling down, my phone went off with my really low-key notification tone, which was a singular beep. Well, the pet bird nearby seemed to have taken a shine to that noise and mimicked it perfectly in tone and volume. The caretaker and I looked at one another with her saying, I've been here for 6 years and he's never done that before. From then on, every time I delivered and knelt down to re-educate the caretaker, SOP demands it, that bird would instinctively ping me until I let my phone notification sound go off. After which the bird would celebrate by bobbing his head up and down and turning in a circle. I never had any interest in birds whatsoever. I mean, I didn't dislike them. I just was entirely ambivalent. Then my daughter got Peanut, a male parrot. Now I'm so hooked. They're like little drunk people. He's like 4 inches tall and he's so ferocious. I love him like he's one of my children. I mean, he's in the top 3 and I have 4 kids, so. Fire alarm inspector. Working in a cheap long-term hotel and knocked on a door where a larger man dressed in essentially a purple bikini opens the door half asleep. Enter to test the smoke detector and tried to keep my eyes off the bed, but I knew I had seen something. Tried not to look, but I did, and there's a big old purple dildo next to the TV remote. The detector then decides to not alarm in a timely fashion, so I'm just staring at the wall hoping it will alarm, so I get out of the room. I once helped renovate an old building that was a house but converted to a business and was super run down when my employer bought it. We did a ton of work including removing subflooring and ceilings. We found a hidden cellar in the back suite once the kitchen or mud room. The thing was filled with trash and random odds and ends. There were GI water ration cans dated 1956. In the middle suite we kept finding spoons in the ceiling as we were taking it down. It was weird, but then we realized that it was where a junkie kept ditching the spoons. I delivered pizza, but for older customers I'd always go into their homes to bring it inside for those who were severely handicapped or just didn't have the strength to bring their food inside. One time I delivered to this lady who was covered in cat hair, head to toe, and the inside of her house was rancid. I mean, I couldn't go in there without holding my breath every time. One time I went and she had in her kitchen on a table a paper plate with what looked like teeth. And I mean a lot of teeth. Different colors and shapes and just horrifically repulsive. Don't know whose teeth they were. From what I could tell she had all if not most. Haven't heard any stories about her since, so I'm guessing she moved or something else. Never will forget that smell though. I tutor privately, so sometimes I meet clients at their homes. One lady had a huge shrine to Bob Burdella, which is really confusing because usually women attracted to serial killers gravitate toward the attractive ones. The only Bob worth building a shrine to is Ross. You can have a Newhart candle, or maybe even a bong for Marley or a sweater vest for Saget, but that's it, man. Used to deliver oxygen to people's homes. Saw plenty of weird things. Lots of hoarders. But this one took the cake. He didn't want to let us into his house. But I had to do a home safety assessment before I could set up the equipment. He was anxious about letting me in because his house was mess. He kept telling me about his messy house. Come to find out, it wasn't just messy, it was filled with 200 chickens. He was proud of his show chickens and wouldn't let them live in a barn or coop. The smell was unbearable. Other than that, he was a super nice guy. Long ago I did estimates for fire and water damage repairs for a restoration company. This couple had a smallish fire in their bedroom. When I enter the home it's seemingly normal. Smells like smoke, there was a fire. Makes sense. They take me to the bedroom and it was the mattress that had endured the majority of the fire, along with some of the wall above the head of the bed and smoke damage to the ceiling. Next to each side of the bed are 10-gallon buckets filled to the brim with cigarette butts, and hundreds of spilled over butts all over the floor. I was just in awe how they could live like this in their bedroom, especially since the rest of their home seemed tidy and normal. Also completely beyond me why they wouldn't clean that shit up after the fire if for no other reason than insurance adjusters being able to blame them rightly and possibly not pay out. How did the fire start, I asked. Required to ask. No idea, the husband replied. Truly a mystery for the ages. A few years back I worked as an electrician. I found a guy with a rifle laying next to him where he had tried to blow his head off through his mouth, but he had missed the vital parts. Brain and blood was all over the bed but he was still breathing. He was in coma state of mind. Heard later that he died that day. I'm an electrician and I was troubleshooting a bad outlet in the bathroom of a former NFL player. I was taking all the outlets apart, following them to see if I could trace out the home runs when he comes in and starts talking football. We are in the middle of talking when he just walks over to the toilet and starts taking a shit. I couldn't see him but there was just a little pony wall between us. He didn't even stop telling his story. It was crazy. I walked out because of the smell. He came out a little later and it was like nothing ever happened. Bunch of used pregnancy tests on the floor of the teenage daughter's closet. I didn't say a damn word to anybody. Just read a post about a girl with social anxiety who hid under her bed when the plumbers came and then the plumbers caught her under there, and then she ran and hid in the bathroom until they left. Wonder if those plumbers are on Reddit. I most definitely want to hear their side. I was a paramedic in Oakland and once I was in a home where a child has been bitten by a rat in her crib. As we were standing there talking to the mother about her options, a rat walked up to one of the firefighters and bit his boot. The firefighters stomped to the rat to death and the rat was taken to the health department for testing. That was a strange situation. Food bank delivery to homebound elders. I always fill 2 banana boxes around 1.5 by 3 and a foot deep of all types of food and deliver to his house. One time after delivering to him for 3 years I have to come inside because he hurt his foot. He had never thrown out a single box. They lined every wall and entrance. He built a castle around his bed, and a series of paths through his house. It was like those pillow forts you would make as a kid but with boxes. I asked him if he wanted help getting rid of them and he said no, that it was fun and helped with his dimension. He's super fun. I delivered pizza for about 2 years. I had to deliver to a local motel pretty frequently. One day I go to deliver and a large lady, I'm talking 6'220", was decked out in dominatrix attire. She answered the door ready to get down to business, then immediately closed the door and threw a robe on. She apologized profusely and then tipped me $10 for the situation. You're lucky that she wasn't expecting her client to show up as a pizza delivery guy, who she is supposed to forcibly abduct and discipline. My boyfriend is a locksmith. During the 2008 recession, Las Vegas had thousands of homes that were getting repossessed or abandoned. The company he worked for would have him go and change the locks to keep people out, and usually this happened in the middle of the night to limit the possibilities of running into owners of the properties. I sometimes tagged along, mostly to explore some of the ridiculously big houses that people had just left, but helped some of the time. This one house looked totally normal from the outside. You couldn't tell any difference from any of the other cookie-cutter, planned development homes. But inside, in every room, there were those time-out dolls. If you have never seen them, they are a doll that stands against the wall with its hands up to its face, and even more creepy, usually they have no face but they look like a kid hiding their face or pouting after being put in a timeout. When I say they were in every room, I mean every single room, and not just one, but dozens, lining the walls, not laying down, but standing up against every wall of the house. The house's electricity had been shut off, so all we had was flashlights. Walking into each room, it did not get less creepy seeing doll after doll. He is already afraid of dolls and this made it so much worse. Altogether we counted 63, but there might have been more. I've posted this before a while back, but used to work pest control, went into student accommodation to deal with insects. Can't remember what type. Carpet moths or bedbugs? Maybe. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. This one room is fairly clean, but we have to spray all fabrics with the chemical in question to prevent any eggs from having a safe space to gestate. So open up suitcases, wardrobes, that sort of thing. One suitcase is full of used tampons that she was saving for knows what reason, actually. And I don't want to know. Nasty shit. That. Didn't mention it. Just did the job and tried to avoid eye contact at the end. Was a carpet cleaner. Porn. So much porn. You guys. Like. So much porn. Probably the weirdest and most disturbing was the gay couple who had an entire room of framed photos of them in different positions and outfits and/or various states of undress. They liked to watch while I cleaned that room. I kept my eyes low and didn't focus on any specific one or make eye contact with them. Just kept about my business steaming the carpets and pretended there wasn't anything unusual about what I or they were doing. Definitely a weird kink of some kind. My area historically has been very conservative and repressed, so I dunno, maybe that factors in. They tipped well, so I kept my mouth shut for the most part and just made sure when their address came up that I always got that job. I used to do flooring, and when we had to get up the subflooring due to water damage, underneath it there was a black garbage bag. When I opened said bag, it had a bunch of women's clothes in it. Didn't think anything about it until we dumped it out and found bloody ripped underwear and torn dresses. Told the owner we had forgot some stuff at work and wouldn't be back until tomorrow. Called the police and never went back. The house was soon up for sale a month or so later. I can't imagine that was the current owners. Lol, oops, forgot about my rape, murder bag beneath the floor and the contractors found it. Certainly it had to belong to a previous owner or whomever built the house. This makes me feel so much less paranoid about the cleanliness of my house when professionals come over. My uncle is a handyman and he went in to do some work for a family and the toilet was just feces. Not like someone didn't flush. Rather, nobody did, and the bowl was just crammed full of hardened stool, which had clearly been an accumulating scenario. I did apartment maintenance for a while. We started quarterly inspections, and the first day we opened a door and the smell that came out was indescribable. The guy who was with me was ex-military and he said that we were about to find a body. In the maintenance community this tends not to be a matter of if you ever find a body but when. He told me that he would go in alone if I was uncomfortable with it, but I went in too. We didn't find a body, but we found a mountain of trash that took up the entire dining area. And honestly just trash, mostly food packaging everywhere, and that accounted for a lot of the smell. We also found a dog, a very sweet golden retriever that was starved for attention. It was obviously being left to just piss and poop all through the unit. It probably hadn't been outside in weeks based off of the smell and general condition of the unit. We went outside, locked up, and called the property manager for her to come by. While we were waiting he came home. The look on his face when he saw us was terrifying. The manager talked to him and they set a plan about cleanup and gave a time frame for him to get the unit back to regular. The other maintenance guy stayed with him for a while that evening. When we left the unit he was sure that the guy would kill himself that night. Turns out the renter had recently went through a very rough divorce where his children had been removed from him with very little warning and he was spiraling. I left the company before I learned how it all ended. I hope he is doing better. I'm a face painter who does children's birthday parties. I've never had any super sketchy experiences. Just a few run-down homes, but the kids always have fun. I went to one house. Kinda messy and smelly, but no big deal. I started setting up my supplies and I heard a weird peep sound above me. I look up to see a guinea pig running through a clear plastic tube attached to the ceiling. Then I take a good look around the house and notice the whole place is covered with a network of guinea pig tubes. The mom noticed me looking around and nonchalantly told me they have like 10 guinea pigs. I painted a girl's room one time while she laid in bed and played on her phone and took naps. I knocked and expected her to leave, but she just laid back down. It was very strange.